Beloved heart, I invite you to sign up to my mailing list, and as a result of signing up, you will get a free gift. It's a 5D rebalance tune up of all these chakras, and chakras are my specialty. So I would love to gift you with this transmission that is filled with light language and codes to help you stay balanced and tuned up during these increased frequencies of energy of this ascension, this new earth frequency. So check out the links in the notes of this show. And I look forward to connecting with you. I am sending you love. This is the transfiguration of the new you. Hello, beloved hearts. Welcome back to my podcast. I am your host, Monica Bermudez, and we have a very special guest here with us. Her name is Sarah Dawkins. And just to give a brief introduction of her, we're going to talk about beyond the system and into the soul. And it's going to be a very powerful conversation. Sarah Dawkins is a passionate holistic health and healing coach, international speaker, and author of Heal Yourself. She's also a multi award winning entrepreneur and the award winning host of uplifting podcast Heal Yourself with Sarah Dawkins. With over 20 years' experience as a registered nurse, Sarah combined her deep understanding of conventional medicine with her own powerful self healing journey to create a truly integrative approach. And she herself has overcome some significant chronic health challenges. So it's such an honor to have you here as a guest, Sarah, on my podcast with us and sharing your message, which is very powerful and important for so many to hear.
Thank you, Monica. It's a pleasure to be here with you and your audience.
Yeah, thank you so much. I mean, coming out, like, what were some of your most challenging, chronic health that you overcame?
Um, I think the underactive thyroid and the burned out adrenal glands took me a while. The eczema and psoriasis I healed fairly quickly, but every now and then it just pops back up when I step back into behaviors or thoughts
Mm-hmm.
that caused it in the first place. So when I see eruptions on my skin, I know, do you know, it's my mind saying, you just need to think about things a little bit differently, or slow down, or calm down, or take some time out. It's our symptoms are just messages. And yet Western medicine seeks to quieten them with pills.
Yeah, that's a very powerful, message, especially like coming out as a nurse, you get it, what is being in that conventional, medicine. Um, and I feel like so many people are starting to wake up, I would say, and shift into like a different way of like looking at health. Um, can you take us back to the moment when your beliefs around pharmaceuticals were first challenged and what shifted in you in that time?
Oh, absolutely. It's like it's burned into my brain so deeply, because it was really challenging, because my mum was a nurse. My sister and I were raised in that medical model, so we only knew doctors, pills, hospitals, investigations, and that's what we thought health and healing was. And I just happened to mention something about the use of pharmaceuticals at home to a nurse colleague. And she questioned my use of them. You know, when you're thinking, why did she do that? Because we're nurses and that's what we do. But that was my real starting point. You know, I need to go home now and search the internet. This was back in 2005. And I'm like, I need to find out why she would say that, because that, that was my life view. That's all. Everything outside of that, I had no idea that was there. It was all about doctors, diagnoses, and pills. So that kick-started my journey into looking at what I could do for myself, what was available, because I had no idea outside of those pharmaceuticals. And that's how I found how powerful we are as a physical vessel, a mind, a body, a soul, a spirit. Um, and that we need to work everything together, and that the Western medicine actually separates it all out into we've got doctors of the brain, doctors of the heart, doctors of the skin, doctors of the bowels, and everybody separated our body out, and yet every part of us works with every other part, and that when one thing is going a little awry, it's connected to so much of our other parts. And yet the Western medicine doesn't look at that. The cardiologist only looks at the heart. He doesn't pay any attention to the mind and the nerves and the muscles and the gut and what's feeding that. So that's how my whole journey of natural self-healing was kick-started by a colleague questioning me.
Wow, that's so powerful because you're right. I mean, all the doctors, they separate every organ of the body, and it's almost like a stovepipe, right? They just focus their whole attention on that one area. But you're right, everything is such an integral part of our body system. We're like mostly of energy, so a lot of the energy that flows through us, like you have all other stuff going on that is an integral part to the physical body itself. It's not just, separate from each other. So that's a very powerful thing, to come to that realization, early on and shift the narrative. And to me, this is the way forward, moving forward, I think, of like being innovative and creative in this way. Do you feel that you're moving more towards that, or do you sense that more people are still kind of resistant?
I think there will always be those that are resistant. As
Mm-hmm.
Leonardo da Vinci says, a third of people will see, a third will see when shown, and the third will never see. So that
Mm,
third that will never see will always be resistant. They will be like I was with those blinkers, and all they will
yeah.
see is doctors and pills and hospitals, and they just won't see anything outside. But for everybody else, like myself, I saw when I was shown after doing some research and thankfully remaining open-minded to see what I was capable of.
Mm-hmm.
And then there's those people that already knew this previously. So I've stepped into the now I know it, and now I'm helping others to see it. That we're not
Right.
just an organ or a mind, that we are mind, body, soul, and our healing has to be holistic.
Yes, agreed. I mean, that's quite a transition to make. I mean, you said you experienced like a deep depression during the transition. What was happening internally during that time, and how did it become a turning point in your healing journey?
So I had started my own healing journey, and I first healed eczema, psoriasis, and acid reflux just by tweaking my diet and lifestyle. And so seeing those tangible results in my body gave me the evidence and the impetus to keep going, because until that happened, I was just reading things on the internet and thinking, well, that's happened for them. I wonder if that can happen for me. So I'd started my own healing journey, started as I say, tweaking my diet and lifestyle. So at home, my health, my life was more of a totally natural, holistic way of living. But then in the hospital, and we'd moved back to the UK at this point, I was having to follow doctor's orders, give out medications. I worked in theatres and recovery, so I was helping people post-operatively. And of course, I wasn't allowed to talk about what I was doing at home and how people could heal themselves. So I was really conflicted, because my whole life I only ever wanted to be a nurse to help people when they were vulnerable. And I saw that actually, yes, I was helping them have a wash and helping them to get off the bed and helping them to reduce their pain. I was helping them in those ways. But actually, I was keeping them in the medical model. I was keeping them in that sick role, rather than being allowed to educate them about how they could look after themselves and what tweaks they could do. So living those two separate lives with two different hats on, if you like, became very, very conflicted. I couldn't tell people at work what I was doing, although I told some of the staff, but I couldn't talk about it with the patients. And then living at home was totally different. I was finding different ways of healing, medicating symptoms if I needed it, through supplements and different solutions naturally. And that spiraled me, that conflict spiraled me into a deep, dark depression. And I actually had suicidal thoughts. I had to visit the doctor because I needed the time off work. Having time off work needed a doctor's note. The doctor wanted to medicate me with sleeping tablets and antidepressants. I'd done that route before when I'd had my son and I had postnatal depression, and it just made me a zombie. It literally took all my emotions away and all my feelings. So I knew I didn't want to go down that route again, but I'd already healed chronic pain, candida, PTSD, the eczema, psoriasis, the acid reflux. So I knew I could heal myself. I just didn't know how. So I was floundering for a while because I was in that deep, dark place. And then one day I just realized that there was leaves on the trees and there was flowers on the ground, and literally it was like I just popped out of myself to rejoin the outside world, because I was walking the dogs. So yeah, I had to walk the dogs. It was though it wasn't negotiable. The dogs needed to walk. That my family needed their meals on an evening. So I went through the motions of things I had to do. um, and it was at that moment, I realized that I'd been lost in that deep, dark abyss. And I started looking, and I realized now looking back, I was becoming mindful and using gratitude, because in the UK there's a lot of grey sky. So I'd be like, oh, look, there's a tiny patch of blue sky there. And how beautiful are the flowers on the ground, and the trees are all in leaf now. It was spring. And it was a few months down the line that I realized I'd actually intuitively practiced gratitude and mindfulness. And that's what really started to lift me out of that darkness that I was in.
Wow, that's very powerful, especially when you're having like suicidal thoughts. That's gotta be really hard. Switching out of, so many years of doing what you were doing, you were taught, follow pretty much a model that was taught in school.
Yes.
So I get that. And I imagine that it was difficult, letting go of that role of like, the fixer, I guess, um,
Yes.
and what, you did with the gratitude was really like helping you move into a space of like holding empowerment for others to like heal themselves. Um,
Yes.
yeah, so that takes, a lot of courage to do that. Um, in a
Yeah.
way, I would say.
Yeah. But I knew I couldn't go on as I was. And something had to change. But then I had that whole internal battle of, who actually am I? Because I always aligned with Sarah
Mhm.
the nurse. And if I'm not going to be a nurse anymore, who am I? And I couldn't answer that question. So that took me into finding who I was authentically.
Yeah, so that's a very important point that you're making because it's really about the ego. When the ego, like talk about like the identity, how we identify ourselves to certain jobs, right? And even
Yeah.
places and with people. And so when stuff like this starts to like change and shift into like when you start changing into something else, a different role, then that's when the conflict arises and it feels like a battle,
Yes.
internal battle is going on inside, and so there's the battle of holding on to the old identity or stepping into the new. And so that's why, it's either you go forward or you go back. And so I feel like a lot of people are kind of struggling with that right now because there's been like an ongoing unexpected changes, where the carpet gets pulled under their rug. So things are like quantum shifting at a much accelerated levels. Like either you get it now or you just like, stay where you're at, stuck. But in your case, you chose not to stay in that position. You said, I'm going to go forward and I'm going to take this, to me, that's being brave and being courageous.
And it was because I stepped away from the hospital and I became a nurse entrepreneur as like a sidestep, if you like, because that
Mhm.
was still me as the nurse, but I was doing different roles. I was doing medical legal work, I was doing DNA work, and I was doing training. So I was training hospital staff, all the staff at different levels in the hospital on their annual updates. So I was no longer working with patients on pharmaceuticals. I'd stepped away from that. And that worked for a while, but every year I had to sign the nursing register to say I would uphold the nursing standards, which means drugs first, and following doctor's orders, and that still caused me conflict at the end of every year having to sign that. So that was what pushed me to train as a coach, knowing that I'd healed myself. I thought I can now help others with the knowledge I've got of the medical model, plus my own knowledge of healing a huge amount of health problems. I can now help others to find the root cause of their symptoms, which means listen to that little voice inside of us that's talking, that's trying to help us to say, look, you need to address this, or look, you need to stop doing that, or this needs to change. And we tend not to listen to that voice. We tend to stuff it down and think, it's only a headache, I'll take a pill. It's only an upset stomach, it will pass. It's only a rash, I'll just put some cream on it and it'll stop. And we dismiss all those little signs that our body is sending us until we get the bigger signs, the chronic pain, the migraines rather than the headaches, the huge bowel problems rather than a little bit of an upset stomach. And
Mm.
that is really our body shouting at us to say, look, I need you to listen to me. And when we stop and do that, that's when we can understand what it is that the symptom is saying. So in wanting to do that, I actually surrendered my nursing license because I could no longer live that dual life. Trained as a coach, and now I help others to heal from the root cause, to understand what their body is saying in their symptoms.
Mm. Yeah, that's so key. I'm glad that you said about the how, getting into the root cause healing is to really listening to your body, which is past the conventional medical way of doing it, because they won't tell you that, they'll tell you just take this medicine or take this pill.
Absolutely. And then take this other pill to counteract the effects of this first pill, and on and on.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I always laugh. Have you seen those ads or those commercials where they talk about certain medication? If you take this, you'll like heal from this, but then they show like all these other disclaimers. If this causes death, call this number. Like,
Yes. Yes, and it's always happy families, isn't it? And then they rush through the side effects and you hear death and you're like, whoa, but it's a happy family.
I know.
Yes,
I
yes.
always laugh at those ads. Like, they look so happy. Okay, but here's if you die, call this number. Okay, but you're dead. So like, yeah, but some of those side effects they have in there that they rush in there are so crazy. And they just like it's just I don't know if it's like it's propaganda, like brainwashing, I would say, and just like because
Yeah,
it's like how can you be smiling and have like these side effects where your liver starts bleeding on this and if you take this like
yeah, and I've spoken to people who say to me, "Doctors prescribed me this new drug." I'm like, "Have you seen the side effects?" "Oh, yeah, I've seen the side effects, but, there's side effects with every drug." And it's like, some people are
uh,
just resigned to the fact that they'll take a drug and potentially have side effects and therefore need another drug or to change that drug, and just resigned to the fact that that's how it's going to be. But that's their life, that's their soul contract.
yeah, wow, yeah, that's amazing. I mean, I guess we're not here to convince anyone, but rather just be a guide, especially for those who are waking up to this. To me, that's like a level of awakening, seeing that we're much more being able to heal ourselves. Um, so, in your experience, what are like the most common root causes of chronic illness that people overlook?
I see a lot of problems have roots back in childhood trauma. Now, that can be trauma with a capital T, like physical abuse, sexual abuse, emotional abuse, but it can also be trauma with little t, like being teased, being name called, being, just not a huge abuse, but just something that really sat heavily with the people who are holding it. And it's not so much about what actually happened to us as children, it's more about how we hold that, what that looks like inside of us, because we're holding it through the eyes of the child that we were at the time. And it's how we're holding it that expresses itself in symptoms today. And as I say, the majority of people that I say, the roots of their symptoms come from unresolved childhood trauma, whether that's capital T or small t trauma. There's something in their childhood that happened that is recycling itself in different ways through their lives today.
Unlock your limitless potential with the monthly multiversal circle of creation. This sacred quantum manifestation ritual will awaken your inner power and connect you to the successful versions of yourself across the multiverse. Clear blocks, amplify your creative energy, and set powerful intentions for abundance, love, and possibilities. Activate your galactic aspects, recalibrate your nervous system, and manifest your dreams with cosmic clarity. Available in person and via Zoom. Join us for this transformative experience today.
Yeah. Oh, that's very powerful. For sure, there is a lot of that. I would say like PTSD that's stored in our body that hasn't been looked at or dealt with, because a lot of it, I guess we bury. Like we don't want to face the pain, so we
Yeah.
just bury it. So that's stored.
Yes. Yeah,
Hmm.
and it was
Yeah.
about, I don't know, maybe 4 years ago, I realized I had PTSD because when I heard people shouting or angry, I would have a visceral reaction and I would shake and I would become so anxious and so worried. And I didn't know what was going on in my body. I just felt this fear, this anxiety, until I traced it back and realized actually there was some violence and aggression when I was very, very young, around me. And that when I heard people in conflict, it triggered that memory. Now I've got very faint, vague memories, but I feel it in my body when it's happening. So I did, there was a lot of inner work to do with my younger child to help her to feel safe in the environment. And having done that work now, a touch wood, I no longer have that visceral reaction when I hear conflict. Which, when we deal with it at that younger inner child level, we can heal because we're healing that root cause. So why, once we've dealt with that and understood that and healed it at that level, why would we need to then express it again in our older years, our maturing years?
Wow, that's really interesting. Well, how did you like deal with it to like heal that when you realized that was the root cause? Like, how did you like get to that point?
I had real vague memories of violence and aggression when I was about 3. And I had before I did the healing work, I had a vivid memory of myself and sister sat on the sofa, screaming and crying while whatever was going on behind me. I don't obviously want to go into a lot of details, but we were both very, very frightened young children. And so the inner work that I've done as an adult is about understanding that what happened happened, and there's nothing that I can do now to change it. Um, yes, it wouldn't it have been great if it didn't have happened, but it did. So all I can do is forgive the people who were involved because that there was something going on in their lives and they were doing what they were doing with the knowledge and skills that they had at that time. Um, and work with the younger child, the younger me, who remembered that, and just keep surrounding her in love and telling her that she's safe. And so the first time I heard conflict, that after I'd realized what was going on, I just sat with myself, put my hands on my chest, on my heart, and say, you're safe now. There's nothing to be worried about. I'm here. I love you. I'll protect you. I understand what you went through. Um, and the people around you just did what they did with the knowledge and skills. They didn't have the knowledge and skills to deal with it. So they did what they did with what they had at that time. And that it's now safe, and that's never going to happen to you again, because my inner child was obviously very worried that that conflict would keep reoccurring in our lives. And yes, it might, but I am not responsible for anybody else's um, violence, aggression, words, behaviors, actions. I can't control that, but I can control myself, my reactions, and the reactions of my inner child. And just let her know that what's happening out there in the conflict that's going on around us, near to us, or I've seen, is nothing to do with us, and that we are safe and protected and loved for who we are. We don't have to be anything different. We just are loved for who we are.
That's very beautiful. I love that. And for sure, it's like you become your own self-diagnosis, but also your self-healer as well, your own self-doctor. Um,
Yes.
so like many people feel powerless, right, when they receive a diagnosis from a doctor or a practitioner. And what is the first step to like, reclaiming that power?
I like to help people to step away from a diagnosis. A lot of people want a diagnosis because they think they're going mad with the symptoms. They're like, I've got all these symptoms, they're invisible, nobody, and nobody understands, and nobody's validating me. A lot of people were never validated as children, and they feel unvalidated as adults, and the symptoms go unvalidated until they get a diagnosis. So I understand that. But when we get that diagnosis from a doctor, the experiments from Ash and who was the other one? His name will come to me. But there was some experiments done in the 50s and 60s about obedience to authority. And when we perceive the person in front of us as a person of authority, like a policeman, a school teacher, a doctor, a nurse, we perceive that authority. We are more submissive towards them because we're taught to, obey the authority. So I help people to first of all see that, and then understand that a diagnosis is like a computer program, and that's installed into their mind. And with that diagnosis comes a set of beliefs. So, for instance, your diagnosis is fibromyalgia, which means you're going to be bedbound at some time. You're going to have chronic fatigue. You're going to have pain all the time. You're going to have a whole lot of medications for the rest of your life, and you can never heal it. So you've got the diagnosis, then you've got all these beliefs, so then you've got everything else that you add to that because of the fear going round. So I help them to step outside of that diagnosis, and let's start with your symptoms. What symptoms do you have? What is the message in that symptom? Because fibromyalgia is literally a group of symptoms pulled together, and everybody, predominantly symptoms, are similar but different because it's personal to that person. So let's look at what your symptoms are and what's the message in your symptom. What is that chronic fatigue saying to you? Does it want your body asking you to rest? And you're just like, I've got to push through, I've got to push through, I've got to push through, rather than just going, okay, let's surrender to it, let's rest. What is that joint pain saying to you? Depends on where it is. It's saying different things. Let's look at the message behind the symptom. What is your body trying to express to you? So I'm working with the message below the symptom to help my clients to see that it's not the diagnosis. It's messages from our subconscious mind falling into our body as symptoms. And when we can understand those symptoms, we can let go of the diagnosis and work with just the symptoms. And when we understand the symptoms, we can work with the root cause of why our body needed to express that and heal it.
Yes, that is very powerful. And I like how you said that, and it's true because when you see somebody who's a police officer, who's a doctor, they already like just based on belief systems automatically see them as an authority and all, and that's it. They determine your whole life and your death, and it's like but where, you're saying is switch that narrative and, step out of that belief system that really we're meant to be in our own sovereignty also, like um and that's where, it's very challenging, I would say, to try to like convince someone, but you can't because it has to come from somebody's will to want to change that belief. Um
Yes, yes.
and
And it's the
mhm,
belief change that is the key to understand that yes, that's what the doctor's saying. I'm never going to heal it. I'm always going to be on pills and I'm going to have all these symptoms. To actually, my body heals itself and to believe in that.
yes, yes, for sure. So what would you say though to someone who is skeptical about the body's ability to self-heal? Not that we're trying to convince anyone.
No, I'm not trying to convince. I would just say, okay, so imagine you've got a cut, a paper cut, or you've got a bruise. Would you go to the doctor and ask the doctor to help you to heal that? Chances are you wouldn't, unless you've got a bleeding problem, you're a hemophiliac, or your blood doesn't, your blood doesn't clot, or there's other things going on. For the majority of people, they would just clean up the cut, maybe put a dressing on it, and know that it will heal, and know that the bruise will heal. And that is evidence that our body just is healing itself. Without us doing anything, our body will just heal itself. So if it can heal the cuts and the bruises, why can it not heal the autoimmune and the multiple sclerosis and the ALS? It absolutely can. And the cancer and the Lyme and the stroke and the allergies and sensitivities, we can heal all of that. The doctors just are not taught that and they don't understand because their training, sadly, is sponsored by the pharmaceutical companies. So they only know what they're taught through the pharmaceutical companies. But yet, if you speak to lots of people, there's more people like myself out in the world now that's healed a whole slew of health problems. And the doctors just say we're a fluke. But actually, there's so many of us. There's there's got to be something in it, right? And that's how I started my research, looking for people who had healed, looking at what they'd done to heal themselves, and just following what other people had done and trying it for myself.
That's good. Yes, for sure. The trend is moving forward more in what, doing this whole self-healing and empowerment. And that's a good point about the bruise. Like nobody goes to the doctor like they'll get the bruise. Like you already know like confidently because in your belief system you have this already engraved in you that it's okay. So why can't we do that for all other like chronic illness or anything else that our body is also telling us that it needs your attention on? So those are very key nuggets that you just shared with us. And in your book, Heal Yourself, in your podcast, which are inspiring thousands, what is the core message you want humanity to know right now about healing?
It absolutely starts with your belief. You have to believe that you can heal, your body can heal itself to be able to heal yourself. If you don't believe, you won't heal because your belief will stop you. But that said, if you believe you need to go to a doctor and take a pill, then that's what you need to do. But actually, just think about the bruise and the cut and how your body heals itself. And remain open minded because there are people in the world healing themselves. And my book and my podcast is testament to that. I'm sharing people who've healed a medical diagnosis or an emotional grief. I've shared so many different people, and every week through my podcast, I still share. And my message is you can heal yourself. But the real key is it has to come from your belief. You have to believe you can do it. And the people in my book and the people on my podcast all do different things. I have interviewed and in my between my podcast and book, I must have had 6 people, maybe 7, healed multiple sclerosis, and everybody's done something different, totally different, from food to homeopathy to working in the gym to reading books. They've all done different things and they've all healed because they all believed they could heal themselves.
Yeah, that is very powerful stories and examples that you just shared. Now I'm wondering, like, because I feel like, somebody may be saying, like, well, but, the doctors and the nurses, they study and all of that's been proven or has been scientifically, already done. What would you say to somebody like that?
Go and talk to somebody who's healed themselves of whatever it is that you're looking to heal. There's plenty of people out on the internet. Please have a look through my podcast at all the different people I've interviewed who've healed and just research. Go and look up what people are healing and how they're healing because it's happening and the evidence is there. But sadly, you won't get that evidence from a doctor unless he's stepped outside of medicine and trained in like integrative medicine. Then they've got more knowledge. But if you're looking for healing, your general physician, your general practitioner, doctor will not help you on your journey.
Yeah, and it's very key. Um, and, I would add too that a lot of the medicine and prescriptions that are being given don't have like actual evidence that is really healing. If anything, it adds more side effects. So the best bet is what you're sharing is the research in self-healing. And that is, the best empowerment, I would say. Um, Now, do you believe the future of healthcare is moving towards self-healing and energy-based modalities? And what do you foresee in all this? Like,
I absolutely do, yes. I see more and more people stepping outside of the medical model and looking for alternatives, looking at what they can do. And for some people, they are looking at like acupuncture and chiropractic and energy medicine and sound healing and Reiki and reflexology, all those different modalities. And there's nothing wrong with that, but also we need to direct people inwards to reconnect with that inner
mhm.
voice inside them, whatever name they give it. Some people call it inner wisdom, higher self. Other people call it God, the spirits, the angels, the universe. The name isn't important, but what we have to do is come back into that inner voice and listen to it because it's that voice that will guide us through our healing.
Yes, perfect. That is so key. And so we're gonna wrap it up, but is there any final thoughts you want to share with others? Maybe you could share something for somebody who may be feeling rock bottom right now, physically or emotionally or spiritually, and what's a takeaway message you want to leave them with? And before you answer that, I just want to tell the listeners that they could find all your contact information in the show notes, to get a hold of Sarah Dawkins at sarah.dawkins.com and just get a hold of her. Like, go listen to her podcast, also listen to more stories of others, self-healing as well, and look at her book. Um, so yeah, so what are your final thoughts, for the audience?
Thank you. I would say nobody can do it for you. I've been there at rock bottom. I've been in those suicidal thoughts. I've been in that dark, dark space, as well as healed a whole host of other things. I understand, but nobody can do it for you. You have to dig deep inside and step out of your comfort zone. And the more you step out, the more courage and confidence you build, and the easier it gets. But believe me, your voice will shake, your body will shake because of fear of stepping out of your confidence zone. There's people out there like coaches, friends, teachers, there's groups, self-help groups. There's people out there that can help you and support you, but nobody can do it for you. You have to find the courage to step out of that comfort zone that is minuscule and keep doing and keep moving forwards. And the more you do, the bigger your comfort zone will grow, the more you will be able to step into who you are here to be. And the easier it will be to heal because you're growing your confidence and your comfort zone.
Mm, yes. Thank you. Thank you so much, Sarah, for being here with us and sharing your message of encouragement and empowerment and helping others to self-heal and find their voice, their inner voice that is, and really tap in to their bodies and really just listen. It's all part of the integration, our soul, spirit, mind, and body. Um, and that's what we strive for, to be in a better, healthier state. So thank you for your presence here.
Thank you, Monica. It's been a pleasure.
If you enjoyed this episode, make sure to click like, save, and share with others so they can also experience what you just experienced. And stay tuned for some more high vibe episodes. And I'll be connecting with you in the next quantum field. Sending you so much love.